Top of the morning, everyone. My name is Tshidi, and today's video is slightly different. Today's video, we're focusing a bit more about what are some of the things that you should never ever ask in job interviews. I've spoken to a lot of people in interviews about the questions that they should not have or the questions that they should never ask. I've also done a video with some of the top 10 things that interviewers look for in job interviews. So today's video is going to be making sure that some of the questions that, we said people are looking for, this is not one of those things that you shouldn't be asking in job interviews. We do also have questions that you should never answer as a candidate. These are questions that can be considered discriminatory in their nature, as the interviewer is more likely to only ask a specific group of people. I've put together a list of some of the topics that you should always avoid ever getting into. One of those topics is race. The next one is age, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation or gender identification, religious beliefs, disability, marital status, family status, pregnancy, or the more controversial one, which doesn't always apply in some of the countries, is salary history. In some countries, candidates are asked questions about what their salary history is, whereas in some countries, it's actually illegal to actually ask one of those questions. Now, I'm going to start with the first one that actually speaks about marriage. Are you married, or when are you going to get married? This should never be a question as an interviewer that you ever find yourself asking, regardless of how nice the conversation is going. Not everybody wants to get married. Let's just get that right. In some of the friends that you might have, asking this question could actually get a very different reaction. Now imagine that in a job interview. Even if you're asking this question to a couple, it's not a good idea. And you do not know why they may have decided against getting married. And it may even spark an argument among some. So avoid ever getting into a question about marital status, because that has nothing to do with somebody's ability to actually be able to do that job. The second question is about kids. When are you having kids? Do you have any kids? Are you planning on having kids? This one never ever goes well. It is a very intrusive, and even as a candidate, you should never ever answer this question. Remember that some of the people do not have a choice in the matter. Secondly, you never know what somebody has been going through to actually have kids, or what traumas they've actually been through in the last couple of years. Imagine if the candidate starts crying during the interview after asking them that kind of question because of whatever trauma they might have gone through. That basically derails the whole conversation, and that candidate might not come out as the best candidate for the interview, because you've literally asked a very personal and intrusive question that has got nothing to do with the ability to do the job. So I always say avoid that question, because it's got no bearing on that person's ability to do the job. The third question is actually about pregnancy. It is really a risk to ask a woman when she's due, if you don't already know that she's actually pregnant. Even if you think someone is pregnant, it's still not your place to ask them when they're actually due. Imagine how hurtful it is for the candidate if you were to ask them when they are due, only to find out they're actually not pregnant. In this case, the question can be very helpful. Once again, it doesn't matter what you think you know about that candidate. It is never a good idea as an interviewer to ever get into the question of when are you due? It's got nothing to do with the ability of that individual to do the job. The fourth question is questions about religion. What is your religious background? Your religious background does not determine your ability to do the job. Religion can also be a very hot topic for some people. Any arguments about religion in a job interview take away from the content of the job interview. So my advice to anybody that ever wants to get into this question is do not ask anything about somebody's background when it comes to that religion. The fifth question that I know is very contentious is politics. The question you ask is, why am I asking this question in the first place? It is very important that you avoid asking questions about politics. What purpose does the question serve in the job interview? If you can't figure out what purpose that job serves in the job interview, then you should never ask that question. The last 5 years, the topic of politics has divided families, friends, and has made enemies out of people that have known each other for a number of years. So my advice is, it doesn't matter how cool and hip and happening your interview is, please avoid questions about politics whatsoever. The sixth question is a very personal one. It's about race and ethnicity. In South Africa, this is a very important question because of the transformation requirements that have been put in place by the government. The Labour Department requires that companies employ candidates from previously disadvantaged background. That is why in most cases people always ask the question about your race or ethnicity. It is also not the case in other countries. The only thing that recruiters in other countries focus on is the eligibility to work in that particular country, and not what your race and ethnicity are. It is also very important to understand that in most cases, some of the reasons why recruiters will ask you about eligibility to work in the country is because the company already provides support for anybody that might not be eligible to work in the country but have got the right qualification to actually work in that particular country. So that is one of the key things that you should always remember about this particular question. The next question is, now this one falls under the candidate side. Never ask a question, if I'm hired, when can I start applying for other positions in the company? As much as this might show that you are keen and very ambitious candidate, it sends the wrong message to the line manager who's looking to bring somebody in that particular role for that team. No manager in the history of any other job wants to think that they will need to actually replace you sooner than they've actually planned, or sooner than they think that somebody will actually be taking over. In some cases, you already applied for a job that has been open for such a long time, and asking the question about when can I apply for other jobs in the company already starts giving the line manager the impression that you will not be there for a very long time. So please, as a candidate, avoid asking this question. Even if you want to know, just avoid asking the question. The 8th question that I've got is, never ask how quickly you can get promoted. This is one of the most common questions that applicants come up with, and it should always be avoided regardless of what. It's an inappropriate question because it puts the cart before the horse, which basically means instead of asking when the promotion will occur, it is better to approach the question, what will you need to actually be able to grow in the position or to actually be promoted? This helps getting insights into the company culture, but not about being able to say, oh, okay, I'm already hired, when do I get the promotion? Because the risk that the people have got is in the next 6 months, you're already going to be asking for that particular promotion, even when you're not ready. And if you don't get it, you're going to leave and go to another company. The 9th question that I've got is questions about disability. Some disabilities are obvious. You can actually see. If the person is in a wheelchair, you'll know they actually might have a disability, whether it's temporary or permanent. But many disabilities are not that obvious. In many cases, it will not stop somebody from being able to actually do that job. So don't ask that question. Again, even though you would never intentionally discriminate against somebody with a disability, once you know, you have set yourself up for accusations that you did. You can ask the candidate if they are capable of doing this job. And if a candidate does have disability that needs accommodation, the candidate will bring it up to you after you've already made the job offer. So that's very important that you avoid asking questions that could be perceived as you having discriminated against somebody. The last one is, what did you not like about your last manager? This is normally the question that I always ask hiring managers to avoid asking. It can seem like a very good question at the first stance. If you look at it, it's like, what did you not like about your last manager? It sounds really nice. It sounds like, okay, I'm trying to get as much as I can. It can also seem like you're actually trying to get as much information from that person to understand the virtues of the position that you will be offering them. But the question opens up the opportunity for your candidate to become very negative. We always tell candidates to avoid being negative and speaking negatively about their previous managers. So avoid already dragging that particular candidate into that at all. So those are, for me, the top 10 questions you should never ever ask, whether you're a candidate or a line manager, because they add no value in the person being able to do the job that you've provided. Once again, Top of the Morning with Tshidi, and please don't forget to subscribe. Until we see you again, peace.